Hello, my name's Andy, and I'd like to tell you a little story about civil rights violations in the Blacksburg, Virginia Police Department. I had a series of interactions with two members of the Blacksburg Police Department. One of the officers, Officer Glenn Green, and there's the other officer, an Officer Luke Teubert, both of the Blacksburg, Virginia Police Department. And I'm going to read to you their description of the interactions that we had. In the police report completed by Officer Green, I would imagine this police report was completed accurately and completely as best as he remembered it. I would think that all of the police reports prepared by officers would be completed in that manner. They should be complete and honest and thorough and include everything that was included, everything that happened during the interactions with a member of the public, especially when they result in criminal charges, when they seek to prosecute for a criminal charge, especially when it carries jail time. I would think that they would make absolute certain, above and beyond any other types of petty types of incidents, that these types of police reports would be very thorough and complete. Now, again, Officer Glenn Green wrote this police report. Officer Luke Teubert is listed as the complainant. So, Officer Luke Teubert, a fully uniformed police officer who was on duty at the time of all of these three interactions, he is at some point claiming to be a member of the public for the purposes of filing a complaint against an individual for the utterance of words. So Officer Luke Teubert decided that he was not a government official in uniform on duty. He decided that he was, in fact, a member of the public who became alarmed at my words of criticism. But again, here is the report as described by Officer Glenn Green of the Blacksburg Police Department. And he writes, on Saturday, November 5th, 2023, that was an error on his part. The year of these interactions was in 2022. Officer Green and Officer Teubert were assigned to a traffic post on South Main Street and Airport Road for traffic leaving the Virginia Tech football game. It was Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech football game that Saturday. It was a rainy day. South Main Street was cut to one lane going south, and traffic could not turn onto Airport Road from South Main Street as usual. While on post, a male in the traffic lane of South Main Street, a male stopped in the traffic lane of South Main Street. Officer Teubert walked over to the male, who was in a gray Ford Fusion. The male had his window down and seemed upset to not being able to turn onto Airport. The male stated, "How am I supposed to pick up my customer if you have the road shut down?" Teubert responded, "You're blocking traffic. I need you to move on." The male then began yelling, "I was just asking for help." And then began yelling, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you," as he drove away. Game day traffic was stopped and started to back up during this incident. Now, Officer Teubert, in fact, threatened to cite me for impeding traffic. First, he said I was impeding traffic, and I said, "Hey, I was only asking for help." Then he said, "I'm going to cite you for impeding traffic if you don't move now." That's when I said, fuck you, you useless piece of shit. And he kept talking, and I drove on and said, fuck you. That's what happened. Glenn Green asserts that traffic was stopped and starting to back up during this incident. That was not the case. A short time later, the male came back. This time he came down Airport Road and South Main Street. I came from a completely different direction, and I was heading home at that point. The male again stopped at the intersection and called Teubert over in his direction. Teubert walked up to the vehicle. The male began stating how he drove for Uber and he was only asking for help. Teubert stated, "You were blocking traffic and you didn't need to cuss like that. That's the problem." The male lost his temper again and said, "I'll do it again. Suck my dick, you pussy, and fuck you." No. I said, "You violated my rights, and I didn't like it. Don't do it again." That's what I told him. You violated my rights. I didn't like it. Don't do it again. That's when Officer Green started piping in. At this point, Officer Green began walking towards the vehicle and advised the male he needed to move on, or he'd be arrested, is what Officer Green said, "or you'll be arrested." And I said, "For what? Free speech?" And he said, "No, disorderly conduct." And that's when I said, "Yeah, go ahead. Try it. And I will sue your ass when a judge throws it out." And then I drove on as instructed. But no, he paints it differently. He states that he began walking towards the vehicle and advised the male that he needed to move on. And then I just began yelling, "Fuck you, you're a pussy, suck my dick," and I drove away. No. He states there were pedestrians on the sidewalk in the area shaking their head to the encounter, and traffic was again forced to stop behind the male. There were no pedestrians on the sidewalk or anywhere else. There was no traffic at that time. Not at that time. Not at that time. There was no traffic. Again, a short time later, Officer Green asserts the male drove by the intersection. This time he was traveling north on South Main Street towards downtown. He had his driver's window down and he yelled, "Suck my dick, you pussy," several times before going out of sight. As he drove by, Green was able to obtain his Virginia license plate number. On Monday, Green ran the tag through the Virginia DMV and found the owner to be James A. Earthman. His license photo was a match. Green went to the magistrate's office and testified to the incident. At 3:30 in the morning he did this, 3 days after the incident. And he testified to the incident. He testified to something to a magistrate, and a warrant for disorderly conduct was obtained and turned into the Fusion Center for entry and service. Nothing further. Now, what Officer Green failed to include was the fact that I told Officer Teubert that he had violated my rights and I didn't like it. And that's why I said, "Fuck you, you useless piece of shit." That's why. Officer Green chimed in telling me to leave, and I said, or I'd be arrested. And I said, "For what? Free speech?" Go ahead, I'll do it again. And he said, no, for disorderly conduct. And I said, oh yeah, go ahead, do it, try it. And I'll sue your ass when a judge throws it out. Now, a judge has thrown out that disorderly conduct charge. A judge did dismiss the charge because there was no evidence to support a conviction. None. I asserted in court that all of my words were protected. And I quoted the United States Supreme Court and the city of Houston v. Hill and the written opinion of that Supreme Court. I asserted that my rights had been violated and that all words were protected. Now, the officer tried to change some of the words that were actually said, trying to inflame the magistrate, no doubt. Inflame the courts, no doubt. Inflame the judge, no question about it. He changed the words. The officer tried to include or indicate that there were members of the public present. There were none. No list of witnesses was provided to me prior to nor during this trial. I requested it and they weren't provided. I requested this police report and the town of Blacksburg denied providing this police report until after this case was settled. You see, I had been tried previously for this criminal charge of disorderly conduct. And because I wasn't aware prior to the trial exactly what the police were asserting, I went to trial unprepared. I was denied this document prior to that trial. Now, the same judge that convicted me, Judge Mullins, David Mullins, he also granted a retrial upon my petition of his court. I petitioned the court for a new trial, and that was granted. I petitioned it on the grounds that I hadn't committed a crime, and there was no evidence to support a conviction, and that I had a police report here to prove it. Because after that unlawful conviction, I retrieved this police report from the Blacksburg Police Department without issue. You see, and I took, as I said, I took this down to the courthouse and I petitioned for a new trial. And Judge David Mullen, to his credit, he granted that motion and there was another trial on April 20th. Of 2023. And I prevailed. As I said, I prevailed in court, asserting that my rights had been violated. And again, I quoted the written opinions of the Supreme Court and their findings in the city of Houston v. Hill. And the relevant quotes from that written opinion. And it's very clear, it's very simple, that they absolutely acted in retaliation for my criticism. Now, when Officer Teubert threatened me with a citation if I didn't move along, when I was simply trying to get directions to find out if I can pick up my passengers. That's all I needed. Can I get there from here? Instead of providing me any assistance at all, he immediately threatened me. He wanted to wield some perceived authority that he had to dominate me in the street and demand that I leave or he would cite me with impeding traffic. And there was no traffic behind me whatsoever. And there's no evidence to support that assertion at all. And when I responded to his threats of citation for the mere request of assistance, when I responded to those threats with, "Fuck you, you useless piece of shit," and drove on as instructed, he took offense to that. That's what Officer Teubert did. He took offense to that. Being called a useless piece of shit. And I think it sunk in that he was, in fact, at that moment, nothing but a useless piece of shit that was trying to wield some perceived authority at a taxpayer in the streets asking for help. Just ridiculous. Now, I canceled that Uber request. Actually, I had the passenger cancel it. You see, she was on speakerphone. And after she canceled it, I immediately accepted another request that routed me down Main Street to Country Club Drive to Airport Road to Southgate Drive and another roadblock with a state trooper and I believe a deputy stationed at a roadblock. No traffic could go towards the stadium. My passenger was in the same location as the previous passenger. They were at the stadium trying to leave. And nobody could get them. No Uber driver or no rideshare driver could go to the stadium at that point. They had to walk, I guess. I asked the uniformed officers, state trooper, and I believe it was a deputy, county deputy, if I could get there from here, and they said no, only one way. I said, all right. And I told my passenger who was on speakerphone, you heard it. And they canceled the request. And I turned off the application at that point. I logged off and decided to head home directly. There was no point in doing what I was doing. So I headed directly home, down Airport Road, towards Main Street, and that first roadblock. On the back side of that roadblock. And I stopped the car, and out my open window, I told Officer Green, I was just trying to get some help, man. I'm just trying to pick people up. And Officer Teubert was running around behind my vehicle, raising hell because saying I didn't need to cuss him. And I said, fuck you, man. The reason I cussed you is because you were acting like an asshole. And then Officer Green told me I better move along. And I said, and he said, you better move along or I'm going to arrest you. And I said, for what? Free speech? Go ahead, I'm going to do it again. And he said, no, disorderly conduct. I said, fuck you. You go ahead and try. When a judge throws it out, I'll sue your ass. Now, a judge has thrown this charge out. Now, I know that I may not come across as the most sympathetic of defendants. Or in this case, I may not come across as the most sympathetic of plaintiffs. But I certainly would like to find a civil rights attorney who recognizes that these police violated my civil rights and they acted in a retaliatory manner. And when they took this police report And they requested that not their immediate supervisor approve it, but that Uncle Captain Josh Teubert approve it. There's a problem. This is a retaliatory arrest. This is a retaliatory criminal prosecution because of words, not threatening words. I didn't threaten those officers, nor would I, ever. I didn't try to incite violence. I wasn't trying to get a crowd riled up. I wasn't trying to storm the barricade. I was asking for help from two uniformed police officers who were the only people that could have helped me at that moment in time. They were the only people that could have helped me. They were uniformed police officers sworn to protect, serve, uphold the Constitution, all of those things. And I asked them for help. And they retaliated against me with a criminal prosecution that carried 12 months jail time. Now, the Commonwealth attorney, Mary Pettit, here in Montgomery County, Virginia, she doesn't get involved in these petty disorderly conduct charges coming from Blacksburg. I can only wonder why she doesn't get involved, but an email to me from her in her 18 years holding the position in the county of Montgomery, her office hasn't prosecuted disorderly conduct charges from Blacksburg Police Department. Now, one can only opine, in my opinion, as to why that is because she's fully aware of the United States Constitution as it relates to free speech. Now, how this police officer can decide that he's a member of the public? He's the victim. He's listed as the victim. And how he can say he's a member of the public and the victim of my words is just beyond belief. Well, I believe the Commonwealth attorney believes it. So it's the town of Blacksburg and the Blacksburg Police Department that are having trouble with the concept. I assert a member of the government in uniform, on duty, being paid, is not a member of the public and cannot assert that they were disturbed by words, the mere utterance of words. And these words were in fact criticism of his performance and were in response to his words. I didn't say anything to him until he acted with his perceived authority and threats. And that's when he received the criticism that he deserved. And frankly, yes, I'll do it again. When we see members of government acting so inappropriately, it's our responsibility to call them out. It's absolutely our responsibility to call them out. Now, the case law is just very clear in this. All of my words were protected, even their inflammatory words. And again, these words were simple criticism, saying, "Fuck you, you useless piece of shit. Go ahead, Fuck you, you useless piece of shit, and I'll sue your ass. Fuck you, you useless piece of shit. And driving by, I gave a simple fuck you, you useless piece of shit, while driving down the road. And that's been established, that we can absolutely criticize the police. And the quote goes something like this: a well-trained policeman should be expected, they should anticipate strong words coming from the public. And they should be trained to act appropriately when faced with that type of criticism. I shook it off and continued my day and continued my evening and moved on. 3 days later, that's when they went to a magistrate after Uncle Captain Teubert signed off on a police report. Not the immediate supervisor of either one of those two officers. No. In fact, the immediate supervisor that I spoke with had no knowledge of this crime of the century of disorderly conduct that happened with anyone under his command. He knew nothing about any of the officers that he supervises being involved in any kind of disorderly conduct in the streets of Blacksburg. He knew nothing about it 3 weeks after the event, let alone 3 days. I shook it off. I shook it off until they criminally prosecuted me twice. You see, when I requested and was granted a retrial, a new trial by the same judge that wrongfully convicted me, they had the opportunity to drop the charge. And I requested that they do so. Repeatedly, I requested and I protested the charge. I protested the validity of this charge repeatedly before the second trial. And they insisted on pushing through with a trial. And again, they lost. I prevailed, pro se. I wasn't able to find an attorney to represent me. Sure, maybe I'm an unsympathetic defendant. I'm a taxpayer. I pay all my licensing fees, all the insurance, the registrations, all the taxes, the property tax, the state inspections. I do support the paychecks of those officers, whether I like it or not. Their checks come solely from the taxpayer. And I was upset, I was disappointed that when I needed them for the simplest of assistance, can I get there from here? I'm treated so poorly. We wouldn't want our sons and daughters requesting assistance from the police and being treated in this manner. Ever. We wouldn't want our elderly parents, grandparents, family members, friends, or neighbors treated in this manner. We better not want them treated in this manner, or something else is wrong. These police officers violated my rights. They need to be held accountable.